On This Week in Enterprise Tech, we talk about fake QR codes, a real cybersecurity conference, and no-code development for real enterprise problems. TWiT on the set.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiT, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 476 for January 14th, 2022. No code takes center stage.
This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Linode. With Linode, there's no hidden fees. You can scale up or down without penalty. Get $100 in credit. Visit linode.com/TWiT. And by Bitwarden. Get the password manager that offers a robust and cost-effective solution that can drastically increase your chances of staying safe online. Get started with a free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/TWiT. And by New Relic. The next 9 p.m. call is just waiting to happen. Get New Relic before it does. And you'll get access to the whole New Relic platform and 100 gigabytes of data free forever. No credit card required. Sign up at newrelic.com/enterprise.
Welcome to TWiT, your weekly guide to everything that matters in the world of enterprise technology. I'm your host, Curt Franklin. Eagle-eyed viewers will note that I'm still not Lou Maresca. He is on assignment, but will be back with us very soon. In the meantime, I've got two great co-hosts working with me, and this week, a fabulous guest who is going to bring us all kinds of information on whether or not coding is still required for programming. Before we get there, we have a lot of the show to go. I want to get started by introducing my co-host. First, Mr. Brian Chee, Chief Architect at Sky Fiber and former Director of the Advanced Network Computing Lab at the University of Hawaii. Brian, how are things in your slice of paradise?
I'm great, but you know, the stock people at Publix seem to kind of shake up the 2-liter soda pop bottles. We let it sit for a couple of hours and we tried to gently open it and both took a shower in cranberry ginger ale. So midday shower just to get cleaned up. Lots of stains.
And people say Florida is not an exciting place to be. Oh, yeah. There you go. Well, speaking of excitement, we also have Oliver Rist, executive editor at PC Mag. Oliver, how are things in your corner of the world?
We're experiencing gale force winds at the moment, and I am testing out my new Traeger grill right out on the deck. We're going to see if we can make baby back ribs while sitting in roughly 20 mile per hour winds or so, 20-25. And as a personal favorite to Brian, I'm not going to comment on cranberry ginger ale because, damn.
Well, I'm impressed going for that high-tech pellet grill. Have to wait to hear a report on how those ribs turn out. Oh, yeah. Well, we've got a lot to talk about before we can talk about ribs, beginning with the blips. The White House is meeting with software firms and open source organizations on cybersecurity. White House Software Security Summit brought together officials from the various government agencies that deal with national security and technology, with representatives from major software companies, including Akamai, Amazon, Apple, GitHub, Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Red Hat, as well as members of the open source software community, such as the Apache Software Foundation and the Linux Foundation. The summit was intended to find ways of preventing security defects and vulnerabilities in code and open source packages, improving the process for finding defects and fixing them, and shortening the response time for distributing and implementing fixes. That's according to the Biden administration in a statement leading up to the summit. Summit took place as companies continue to struggle to find and patch a significant vulnerability in the Log4j logging framework for Java applications, which is widely used in enterprise applications. More than 80% of the Java applications on the Maven Central Repository, which is a widely used package management repository, had Log4j as a dependency, which, for those of you not in the open source world, meant those Java applications and components are likely vulnerable to the basic Log4j vulnerability. While the vulnerability hasn't yet led to a major compromise, according to U.S. officials, the issue will likely take years to remediate because of its ubiquity. Industry has already started investing in securing open source software as well as their own software products. At a similar summit in August, Google and Microsoft pledged to spend billions on software security and cybersecurity efforts in the next 5 years. Last year, the Biden administration released an executive order on cybersecurity that was widely praised for being more detailed than past administrations. In addition, the administration announced in October that it would create the Bureau of Cyberspace and Digital Policy within the U.S. Department of State to lead international diplomacy on this critical issue.
Well, scammers in a few big Texas cities have been putting fake QR codes on parking meters to trick people into paying the fraudsters. Parking enforcement officers recently found stickers with fraudulent QR codes on pay stations in Austin, Houston, and San Antonio. Well, this is actually something that I've been harping about for over a decade now and have done some demonstrations at various trade shows. My favorite was reprogramming the RFID on abandoned trade show name tags to get RFID-enabled phones to text me a random message. All this was to demonstrate that both QR codes and RFID tags are potential attack vectors into mobile devices. So while I love it that restaurants are putting their QR code coasters so that patrons can have the menu on their phones in order to avoid the hassle of sanitizing traditional menus, it does mean that the bad guys could just as easily slap a fake sticker over the legitimate QR code and sucker patrons in. So perhaps we collectively need to be careful and actually look at the URL that the QR code or RFID is asking to open. Does it make sense? And is it opening a website associated with the enterprise we're patronizing? I would also say to especially be aware of email URLs that aren't from the restaurant or county parking office or whatever.
All right, the Orca security research team just publicly revealed flaws in 2 Amazon Web Services tools that could have allowed unauthorized access to accounts, been used to leak sensitive files, and caused all kinds of other damage. Surprisingly, both bugs have been fully patched. The first flaw, which Orca dubbed Superglue, was a problem in the AWS Glue service that users could exploit to gain access to information managed by other Glue users. AWS describes Glue as an easy-to-use serverless data integration service that's meant for very large data sets. So to give you an idea, they're allowing Glue users to store up to 1 million objects for free. The vulnerability allowed Orca's researchers to assume Glue-trusted roles in AWS customer accounts, query and modify AWS Glue service-related resources like metadata for Glue jobs, dev endpoints, workflows, crawlers, and triggers. Orca says that AWS responded to its disclosure within a few hours, had a partial mitigation the very next day, and fully mitigated the issue a few days later. The second flaw affected AWS CloudFormation, which is AWS's SDN platform. Orca called that one breaking formation and says it could have been used to leak sensitive files found on vulnerable VMs and expose internal credentials. According to Orca, Amazon completely mitigated that flaw within 6 days. So, okay, another cloud vulnerability story was not going to give you a warm and fuzzy feeling, but what's at least a little reassuring about this tale is Amazon's quick response. If either of those flaws had actually been used in real life, many AWS customers would have suffered through a very bad day with all capital letters. Compared to how long your typical OS vulnerability patch takes, it's nice to know that at least one public cloud vendor understands the potential damage that cross-service flaws can cause and moved very quickly to prevent them.
Well, speaking of public cloud infrastructure issues that aren't reassuring, A new cyber attack campaign is using public cloud infrastructure to spread rats. A recently discovered attack campaign is using public cloud infrastructure to deliver variants of commodity rats, nanocore, netwire, and async rats to target user data. This campaign, detected in October, underscores how attackers are increasing their use of cloud technologies to achieve their goals without having to host their own infrastructure, according to the Cisco Talos researchers who observed it. It's the latest example of adversaries using cloud services like Microsoft Azure and Amazon Web Services to launch their attacks. Most victims in this case are in the U.S., Italy, and Singapore, according to the Cisco Secure product telemetry. Remote administration tools, RAT in this case, they're targeted with are built with multiple features to take control of an environment, remotely execute commands, and steal the target's information. An attack starts with the phishing email that contains a malicious zip attachment. A zip file is an ISO image containing the loader in JavaScript, Visual Basic Script, or Windows batch file format. The attackers have attempted to trick recipients by disguising the email as a fake invoice file. The unknown attackers behind this campaign used 4 levels of obfuscation for the downloader. Each stage of the de-obfuscation process leads to decryption methods for the following stages, which ultimately lead to the download of the final payload. When the initial script is executed on a target machine, it connects to a download server that downloads the next stage, which can be hosted on an Azure-based Windows server or an AWS EC2 instance. Attackers aren't only abusing cloud infrastructure, though. New research shows 2/3 of all malware spread to enterprise networks last year originated in cloud apps, including Google Drive and OneDrive. Today's organizations are more likely to be hit with malware downloads from cloud applications than from any other source, a shift experts attribute to the convenience and cost that benefit attackers. Cisco Talos researchers advised organizations to inspect their outgoing connections to cloud services for malicious traffic. Defenders should also monitor traffic to their business and implement rules around the script execution policies for their endpoints, researchers noted. Well, that's it for the blips. We've got bites coming up as well as an incredible guest. But before we do that, we need to turn to Lou Maresca to tell us about a fabulous sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech.
Well, thank you, guys. I'll get you back to your enterprise and IT news in just a moment. But before we do have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Linode. Now, someone I've been using for a while now. Back in the day, you used to have to co-locate your own servers and rack mount them yourself, but things are more cost-effective and scalable today. Now, compute is readily available to you, and Linode offers the industry-best price-to-performance value for all compute instances, including shared, dedicated, high memory, and GPUs. Now get free DDoS, cloud firewall, unfiltered API access, and much, much more. Linode offers predictable flat fee pricing, which is universal across all 11 of its data centers. Now, why should you choose Linode? Well, you'll get support experience above the rest. People choose Linode because they demand a better customer support experience. Linode's independence and mission drive them to a different standard where the customer is the driving force behind everything they do. They have pay-as-you-go, predictable and transparent pricing. Now, Linode pioneered the predictable flat pricing model for cloud computing. No more anxiety over hidden costs. They make it simple to launch and scale in the cloud. With Linode, you'll get flat pricing across every global data center and intuitive cloud manager, full-featured API, best-in-class documentation, and award-winning support. Now, Linode makes it easy to manage your applications in the cloud. Linode has proven secure and reliable enterprise-grade infrastructure. Now, with extensive peering relationships and their next-generation network, Linode delivers the modern infrastructure and performance you need to innovate at scale. Now, you want to host your website or build your app? They can help you. This is how I use them, and they're super great. Now, you can store or back up media. Plus, you can easily launch and enrich your developer applications, hosted services, websites, AI, and machine learning workloads, gaming services, or CI/CD environments. Launch and scale in the cloud with their virtual machines. You can choose shared and dedicated compute instances, or you can use $100 in credit on the S3 compatible object storage, managed Kubernetes, and much, much more. Linode was rated the easiest to use by G2 Crowd in 2021. That's why cloud developers choose Linode, because they make managing complex cloud infrastructure easy with simple bundled pricing, full featured API, and 100% human support. Linode helped pioneer cloud computing back in 2003, 3 years before AWS. So they have the longevity can be trusted. With Linode, there's no hidden fees, and you can scale up or down without penalty. Get $100 in credit. Visit linode.com/TWiT. That's linode.com/TWiT. And we thank Linode for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Back to you guys.
And anyway, so one of the things we wanted to bring up is that Oliver was very nice to show up on the show today, even though it's his birthday. I'm not going to say how old he is, but that's all right. So Oliver said he wants balloons. So there you go, bud. Happy birthday to Oliver.
Oh, thank you.
Who's going to lead the singing?
I think we ought to not, we might get an FCC violation for bad taste or something.
Good call, sir.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, so happy birthday, Oliver, and many, many more to come. Anyway, so for the first bite, I'm going to dredge up some of my past history. When I first got started after I got out of college, I worked at a Canon, Okidata, and Toshiba repair center. And back in those days, the brand new technology called inkjet printers used tanks. Since it was all black, no big deal. Well, as time went on, there was a big change to cartridges. And one of the things that someone started bringing up very early on, in fact, I believe it was Consumer Reports, made a mention that if you added up the cost of those tiny little milliliter tanks, especially the tricolor cartridges, you could get anywhere between $1,664 to $9,600 per gallon of ink. So this started into some interesting things. Some of us are old enough that we remember how Gillette suddenly dropped the price of shaver handles. And the idea was make them cheap enough so that people buy blades only from Gillette. Well, the printer manufacturers are doing the same thing. In fact, my boss at the time when we were in distribution told us several times that if he could figure out a way to legally make consumers only buy printer consumables only from him, he would give them the printer for free. That's how big the profit margins are on that. Well, that kind of brings us up to the story today. Network equipment manufacturers and original equipment manufacturers, in this case, the story is about Canon, have little accessories. So in the case of networks, it's SFPs and SFP pluses. In the case of printers, like from Canon, it's ink cartridges, and they use chips to handle digital rights management. Well, here's the problem and the basis of this story. Canon is having trouble getting those chips. It's gotten bad enough and apparently a big enough issue that consumers are, shall we say, flooding their tech support lines saying, hey, what's up? Well, Canon caved. And they said, they're publishing on their website and to their customers how to bypass the DRM on Canon printers. Now, if Canon's having this problem, I've got to imagine the other big boys are going to have the same problem too. And, those HP cartridges that I use are not cheap. So what I kind of want to do is, Oliver, you work at PC Mag, and PC Mag has been famous for doing all kinds of printer reviews over the years. Have you heard about DRM bypass procedures coming from anyone other than Canon yet?
No. And it actually, as far as I know, Canon's actually a little worse off than some of the other printer manufacturers because they're facing a lawsuit right now based on some user complaints of users saying that they can't use their multifunction printer's scanning function unless the printer is fully supplied with ink. This is at least true of their Pixma line, but it might also be true of several other lines. And that means that their, the little DRM machinations are actually trying to force you to buy new ink, even when you're not using the thing to print. So Canon still hasn't responded to that in court, and the support site has no fix, and this is several years old. So I'm sure the other printer manufacturers are having something similar, but as far as I know, Canon's kind of, as far as walking down Nasty Street is concerned, they're kind of out in the lead.
Yeah, it's sad. Canon was actually one of the first ones to come out with a cartridge-based toner system. And so that was one of the big challenges when I was working at a repair center is, people trying to use third-party toner, and suddenly it would not print well. All kinds of problems came up. So I want to kind of toss this to Curt. Curt, from your point of view, talking as an analyst and talking to folks in the C-suite or managers, what do you think? Do you think corporate America or corporate world is sick and tired of DRM with their printers?
I think that most enterprise users are unaware of DRM for their printers. And the reason why is that so many of the enterprise users have gone to a managed print service model where basically they have a contract with a provider and they come in and just make printing happen as a service. Now, it's interesting that that was the model that was leading and moving forward pre-COVID. Since COVID, a lot of the economic pillars that was built on are no longer true. All of a sudden, having central printers that an entire work group will go to use doesn't work. I mean, face it, if you've got your employees scattered across a region, it doesn't make sense to make them all drive to a central printer in order to look at their spreadsheet. So I suspect that what we're going to have is an increasing awareness of this as the employees have to use printers that are based where they are in their homes. The interesting part is that I suspect that we're going to start hearing more of the printer manufacturers touting things like security and reliability as reasons for the walled garden, the locked-in features. Now, do I believe that this is true? Not tremendously. Have I seen some demonstrations, some proof of concepts of attacks that could come in via a printer cartridge? Yes. Do I think that's a significant concern for most enterprises? No. So what we're going to have here is yet another major repercussion from COVID, something that the enterprise had stopped caring about, stopped even being aware of in many cases, is going to come back much higher on their radar screen because all of a sudden they've got to have lots of these little inkjet and, admit it, small laser printers that are in use at their employee homes and that their employees are going to complain about when they have to go and get cartridges all the time and, oh, by the way, file expense reports to be reimbursed for them.
Well, I'm going to take one final shot on this topic and give a little bit of a history lesson. The whole deal with, shall we say, network equipment manufacturers of note, they tried to pull the exact same thing with SFPs and SFP pluses, well, it was SFPs in those days. And they would purposely turn off a significant number of features if you weren't using their brand of SFPs. It started off with, no, I won't even work if it's not my brand of SFP. And you can actually thank the General Services Administration and the Department of Defense for slapping the network equipment manufacturers and said, okay, if that's the way you want to play, we're going to put a mandate to all federal and defense agencies, thou shalt not buy this one particular brand because of that. And suddenly there was now a way of turning on third-party support. So I kind of wonder if our friends at the Pentagon are looking at having to spend a lot of money for very, very expensive ink because their people are also scattered to the four corners of the earth and might flex their buying muscles again. Ought to be interesting. Anyway, you know what? I think it's just about time to go and hear from Mr. Lou again, talking about one of our sponsors.
Thanks, guys. I'll get you back to your enterprise and IT news in just a moment. But before we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Bitwarden. The Bitwarden is the only open source cross-platform password manager that can be used at home, at work, or on the go, and is trusted by millions. Now, with Bitwarden, you can securely store credentials across personal and business worlds. Now, every Bitwarden account begins with the creation of a personal vault. Now, use Bitwarden for your business. It's fully customizable. You can adjust features using enterprise policies to adapt to your business needs. Plus, you can use Bitwarden Send, a fully encrypted method to transmit sensitive information, whether text or files. Get enterprise-grade security, and they are GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, and SOC 2 compliant. Now, their end-to-end encrypted vault helps mitigate phishing attacks by storing passwords and much more. Now, Bitwarden recently announced that they'll be rolling out 2 new features for enterprise plans. If you're currently part of a Bitwarden cloud-based enterprise plan, all users will be granted free Bitwarden Families accounts that give you premium features for up to 6 total family members. Now, Login with SSO added a new option for customer managed encryption. It enables a self-hosted enterprise to use a local key server to manage vault encryption keys. Employees can access and decrypt their Bitwarden vault through their SSO credentials without additional passwords. Now, interested in a business plan? Well, their team's organization option is $3 a month per user, where you can share private data securely with your coworkers, department, or entire organization. For enterprises, use Bitwarden's enterprise organization plan for just $5 a month per user. Now, Bitwarden believes that everyone should have access to basic password security tools. Individuals can use their basic free account forever for an unlimited number of passwords, or upgrade anytime to their premium account for less than $1 a month. And if you're looking for secure password storage for your entire family, well, their family organization option gives up to 6 users premium features for only $3.33 a month. Using the Bitwarden Cloud, you can get started in no time. Now, monitor and manage security vulnerabilities using the Bitwarden Vault Health reports. Identify exposed, reused, weak, or potentially compromised passwords, as well as any items in your vault with inactive 2FA. There has been recent news about a popular password manager suffering a credential stuffing attack. Now, credential stuffing is a known and unfortunately common attack where hackers actually attempt to use username and passwords that they've found on the dark web to log into other websites. Now, this serves as a reminder to everybody that it's always important to use different passwords for every website you visit. And when you're using a password manager, to create a strong and unique password only for your password manager, not used anywhere else. At TWiT, we are fans of password managers. Bitwarden is the only open source cross-platform password manager that can be used at home, on the go, or at work, and is trusted by millions of individuals, teams, and organizations worldwide. Get started with a free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit. That's bitwarden.com/twit. And we thank Bitwarden for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Lou. We appreciate it. And we'll be hearing more from you later. But now it's time to talk to our guest. Now, one of the things that we've been hearing more and more about over the past few years is the rise in no-code or low-code software development. Our guest today, Christian Thun, is Vice President of Engineering at Agiloft, a company that is all about the software development and not at all about the coding. We're going to hear more about that and more about Christian. Christian, welcome to This Week in Enterprise Tech.
Thank you, Curtis, for having me. So
it's a great pleasure. One of the things that I want to find out about is something that many of our listeners care deeply about, and that is you. You know, how did you come to be Vice President of Technology at Agiloft?
Well, this is an international story, you could say. You might have heard from my accent that I'm actually German. So I started my career back in Germany a long time ago in ICT, first in engineering. So I learned a lot about networks and software and how to build this. And then moved into product management, where I started building products around these ICT systems. So and this is where I actually stumbled across the biggest problems that the industry has. And this is about changing processes in organizations or in the enterprise, because these processes, they use IT for automation. These IT systems usually are a slew of different applications. They need to be integrated, and changing these integrations was always the biggest nightmare of product development. So after I came here to the US, I found out about Agiloft and what Agiloft is doing, building a no-code platform. Or at that time, they were building a no-code platform for business process management. And that was very interesting. So when a job opening became available for the VP Engineering, I applied. And I've been with Agiloft now for the past 3 years, where we've actually narrowed down our focus a bit from no-code business process management applications to focus on a contract lifecycle management.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned the business process engineering. I remember back in the 90s when the ERP was really taking hold in the enterprise. One of the most difficult and costly parts of an ERP deployment was the business process re-engineering that tended to go along with it. Are you finding that companies now are using new application development as an opportunity for business process re-engineering, or is it the other way? The companies are going into business process re-engineering and finding that developing new applications is a critical part of bringing those new processes to life?
Yes, I would say the latter, and it goes probably a bit further into not developing all the applications from ground up, but using applications that exist and adapting and integrating them into a new ecosystem.
Very interesting. All right, so let's talk about these ecosystems and building applications. Why is a low-code or no-code system being looked at favorably? Isn't the best solution for most enterprises just to go out and hire software developers in the classic model?
Well, this is a good question. I think here we have to look at where these no-code applications exist. So the application that we are building in Agiloft is one that automates your business processes right now for a specific application. But there are also other low-code, no-code apps out there that deal with the integrations of different applications on one platform. And I think you need both to make this work. And the advantage of no-code, low-code is that you move, or that you have the ability to move some, if not the biggest part of your changes that you want to make, the apps that you need to build to run your processes, into the departments where these processes are used. So this drastically reduces the development cycle of these applications, because you have the user basically saying, I need this, and then they make the changes and build it. Now you have to deal with, of course, the other issues of security and making sure it fits into your organizational policies. But that long design cycle and making IT understand what you need goes away. And the other problem that you solve is that the integrations between applications is becoming standardized, where before you had maybe, let's say, 10 different applications in your organization. If you made a change in one, you need to build a new application basically to make these two applications talk to each other. Now you go onto your no-code integration platform and make some configuration changes there that reflect the change in the business process. So I think it's extremely helpful to have them.
I can absolutely understand the desirability of moving the application development closer to the business processes, so closer to the business unit. But I was pleased to hear you mention things like security. And I will admit that I've been around enterprise software development long enough that phrases like software quality are important to me. Are there issues around security and software quality, or to put it in mainframe terms, software maturity, with this model? Or is that something that your platform tends to handle for the users, making sure that things are secure and that the overall application quality is where it needs to be?
Well, yes, I think you brought up the two important points. There is actually a challenge, because as an organization adopting no-code platforms, you have to make changes to the way you handle the application development. So now you have a broad user base, basically a broad base of developers who can build your applications, which solves one of the bottleneck problems you typically have to make changes. But at the same time, you hand over application development to employees who don't necessarily have the background that is needed to build these applications in a secure and high quality way. So what is necessary in the organization is to basically redefine the role of your IT security department and the policies around there to make sure that the applications that your users build are properly integrated into your security ecosystem or environment. So the other part is, of course, what you brought up, that the platforms, being no-code platforms, already integrate many security features in a standardized way, which I think is the really good part of it. So the challenges you normally have around building a new application, where you maybe look for, let's say, some open source libraries that you need to plug together, build some code around it to handle permissions, to handle logins, SSO, all the features you build into your application. All this is already ready and done. The libraries were vetted, they were tested and checked by the developers of the platform, and the security features are built in, and all you have to do basically is configure them. Yes, so it makes it easier to handle security from a code perspective, but you have the new challenge of dealing with the procedures and policies in your organization to actually maintain application security.
I appreciate that. Now, based on what you just said, I've got to do a throwback to one of the blips that we talked about. The Log4j issue is one that has gotten a tremendous amount of attention because of its ubiquity and the fact that there are software dependencies. It's really tough to find a significant piece of enterprise application code that doesn't make use of Log4j. Are you saying that because of the model that you have, that sort of issue is not going to exist, that you in effect vet all of the libraries and all of the dependencies so that people can develop applications and not have to worry about these rogue libraries that might be brought in?
Yes, actually, the responsibility for this kind of security is then shifted to the developer of the platform. So, in fact, with Log4j, we were able to fix that vulnerability pretty much immediately as soon as it was known within the same day. And then we upgraded our software, our platform, so that all our customers could benefit from it right away. And you cut out the risk in your organization to identify that there is this issue, find out which applications are using Log4j, and then making the necessary changes, because that was all handled by the provider of the platform.
That sounds like something that would be awfully attractive to a bunch of folks. And we're going to talk more about the attractive features as well as things people need to be aware of when I bring my co-host in. But before I do that, we've got to go back to Lou Maresca one more time to hear about another sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech.
Well, thank you, guys. I will get you back to your enterprise and IT news in just a moment. But before we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's New Relic. Now, if you're a software engineer, you've been there. I know I have. Mine was 12 a.m. on a Sunday at a neighbor's house after cards. But imagine it's 9 p.m. and you're finally unwinding from work. Your phone buzzes with an alert. Something's broken. That's right. And your mind's racing at what could be wrong. Is it the back end or the front end? Is it global? Is it the server? Is it the network or cloud provider? Are we running slow queries? Did I introduce a bug in my last deployment? I know I've done that one before. Now, the whole team scrambling from tool to tool and messaging person after person to find and fix the issue. That won't happen if you get New Relic. Now, New Relic combines 16 different monitoring products that you'd normally buy separately, so engineering teams can see across their entire software stack in one place. More importantly, you can pinpoint issues down to the line of code so you know exactly why the problem happened and can resolve it quickly. That's why the dev and ops team at DoorDash, GitHub, Epic Games, and more than 14,000 other companies use New Relic to debug and improve their software. Whether you run a cloud-native startup or a Fortune 500 company, it takes just 5 minutes to set up New Relic in your environment. That next 9 p.m. call is just waiting to happen. Get New Relic before it does. And you can get access to the whole New Relic platform and 100 gigabytes of data free forever. No credit card required. Sign up at newrelic.com/enterprise. That's NEWRELIC.com/enterprise. newrelic.com/enterprise. And we thank New Relic for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Lou. We appreciate that. And now it's time to broaden the discussion. Time to bring my co-host in. I'm going to start with Brian. Brian, I know that you have some experience with developing enterprise applications. What do you think about the no-code model?
Actually, I think I want to lead in by asking about the elephant in the room. Coming from a computer science degree program, I'm wondering, are we in a shortage of developers? Is that what's driving the no-code, low-code generation? Or is it just a shift trying to get development closer to the subject matter experts?
Well, I think it is. I believe it is the latter. We are, of course, in a time of shortage of developers just because of all the software development out there in the world. The cloud business is growing, but the no-code application evolution is really driven by the issue that if you want to make changes in your organization to your procedures and processes, you need to change the underlying IT, and this has always been very difficult. The business cycles are speeding up. Business is accelerating. Changes need to be made more frequently, and the IT systems just can't keep up with it. So the no-code platforms, they really solve this problem of handling these changes relatively easily and making it possible to integrate IT with your changing business processes.
Which sounds great. As a computer science major, I was really and truly hoping it was going to be some sort of nice balance. I still develop. Now it's a hobby, but there's been some really interesting changes in the way development happens. And I've been seeing no code, low code as something that I've actually pushed some simple low code, no code solutions into the elementary school level. I actually also helped this little girl do a science fair project using a no code system. So I'm really looking forward to how it's going to change the world. And I just hope there's still jobs for programmers. Anyway, Mr. Curt, what do you think?
Well, I'm like you. I grew up when Fortran was the height of new coding. One of the questions, Christian, that I have to get back to your platform, when we talk to professional developers, people who do write code, one of the issues they talk about a great deal is the complexity of modern infrastructure, because you so often are pulling bits and pieces from various cloud providers. You might even be pulling data from multiple cloud repositories. How does your system deal with that kind of complexity? Is it masking all of that from the people developing the application, or does it assume that they're going to learn how hybrid infrastructures work?
Well, this is actually really also one of the challenges and the tasks that such a BPM platform has, to be able to integrate with other applications and to map and synchronize data between these applications. So our platform specifically has built-in modules that can handle this, and you can completely configure these kind of integration with mouse clicks. You don't need to code anything. And the way this is done is that we're working with a host of pre-built connectors to all the important applications. Yes, let's say Salesforce, for example, is one that's big, or Microsoft ecosystem. And in addition to this, of course, we also connect with what is known as iPaaS platforms, basically middleware, no-code or low-code middleware platforms that allow you to integrate all these different cloud applications with a few mouse clicks. Yeah, what we just heard about, basically.
All right, and you've been talking about the integration. As we look at Agiloft, is it a platform? Is it a system that requires users to develop the code, the logic of the process from the ground up, or are they in many cases integrating pieces of processes that exist in existing applications or services and simply tying them together in new ways to do new things?
Yes, this is actually how it's done. So basically an organization deploying a no-code platform, they already have business processes, they have IT systems, and by deploying this platform, they are not going to throw out all the systems they already have. So this means this platform has to integrate which is already there, and this is really the first task. So you have to map out your processes, your data flows, and then see which data you need in your new system, and then map that data. And this mapping, this is then being done in a no-code way in our system. So we provide a standard REST interface and other standard interfaces to connect with the other applications, and via these, you just integrate, and then you configure the data mappings and how it's synchronized across the systems. So you can basically build a workflow by setting up a data mapping between database on the no-code platform and the database in the other application, and then say what happens if a certain field changes in my table in the new system after it was synchronized, and then you can automatically execute workflows and maybe return modified data.
All right. This seems like something that more and more enterprises would be interested in. As you're looking at the market, are you seeing this as an expanding market across the entire segment? Are you finding that no code, low code is a pie that's growing for all of the players who want to slice?
Yes, it is substantially. Actually, the latest figures I've seen is a year-on-year 30% growth, and it's projected to continue like this for at least the next 10 years. So I think, what is the market size right now? About 10 billion. It's supposed to be 130 billion in a few years. So it's really growing substantially, and I think it underpins what we have been discussing so far, the importance of these no-code applications.
Hello. Hi. So yeah, I had a couple of questions. We actually did a low-code, no-code series of tests back in 2018. Weirdly, Agiloft did not come up on our radar for that one. We did you for contract management, and we did you for help desk. This year is supposed to be the year that low-code, no-code gets polished. I'm not exactly sure what that means. When we did it, we looked at it from a prototyping standpoint, right? You're trying to build a fast prototype of an app. We had developers do the actual testing. They, of course, hated them all because they're worried about job security. However, as an IT guy, as an ex-IT guy, my initial just visceral reaction to this would be no, just no. Why? Because I'm worried about a code level shadow IT problem. I'm not able to control this to the level that I want it, for the safety of my infrastructure. Tools like Microsoft's System Center, right? They're touting things like code level remediation, where I'm able to go all the way down to a particular line of code that's faulty, figure out what the problem is, and fix it. My initial reaction when I see a low-code, no-code app, or I think about it, is this little black box with a very easy front end that does a lot of mysterious stuff and on the back end that maybe I now can't get into, I can't control, I can't fix. So one, like, how would you respond to a frightened IT guy with that question? And are there, just in general, not just for your app, but in general, are there deployment processes that have been established for, QA testing, security testing, whatever, that can go across organizations? Or is each one of your customers basically on their own for that kind of thing?
Yes, so this is really the one challenge that must be addressed, because in your organization, you now develop apps in a different way, basically by users who have not been properly trained in quality assurance and security, so to build these apps, which means you have to somehow tie these developments back into your framework of software security. So, and I think most of the organizations that I've seen where I've been involved with deploying Agiloft, they have a security framework where they also do quality assurance and vetting of the security of an application that they integrate into their ecosystem. So it has to pass all kinds of tests and controls before it is finally deployed in the ecosystem. And on top of this, there is, of course, also, let's say, a rating for the perceived security of the platform. So how much do I really know about how this platform was built, and is it really as secure as they say, or is there maybe some vulnerability? Because for the IT professional in the organization, it looks like a black box. Yes, and this is the concern really. Is it really as secure as it seems to be? So based on this rating within the organization, you would apply security procedures and environment that actually matches with this rating. And I don't think this is really anything new, because it's then a question of how, for example, I build out my network. Does this application have internet access? How do I review the permission system? Who gets access to what in that application? And so on and so on. And this is then how you adjust the environment to make this application work in just at the same level of security that you would expect from an application you had built yourself.
Well, Christian, we have run through our allotted time here, but before we go, I do want to give you a chance to tell our listeners how they can find out more about your system and where they can perhaps talk to someone about getting their hands on the system to try.
Oh, yes, thank you. The best way to do this is to go out to our website at agiloft.com. So if you are in the situation that you want to try out no-code business process management, or even more specifically, set up a new contract lifecycle management system, then please go to our website, and then you can contact us there by phone, email, or via web chat.
Very good. Well, we want to thank Christian Thun, the VP of Engineering at Agiloft, for being with us today, talking about no-code software development and contact process management. Important things for the enterprise that perhaps don't get the attention that they should from many people. Well, speaking of attention, we appreciate you giving us yours for another episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Want to ask my co-host what they're going to be doing this week, starting with Mr. Brian Chee. Brian, what do you have on tap for the coming week, and where can people find out about everything that you're doing?
You know, I'm still tinkering with different things. I've got to go and make some more time. There's a lot of really cool things in load balancing that I want to do, and being able to load balance multiple LTE or 5G or Wi-Fi connections together and for streaming video is a pretty big deal. The market is starting to heat up, and I'm tinkering. Anyway, I'd love to hear from you. You folks out in the chat room and, you know, viewers and so forth, you've been tossing some amazing ideas. Now, yes, we've had quite a few no-code, low-code guests, but that's on purpose. You know, it's got to be one of the hottest topics in the industry now. And the PR folks are kind of bombarding us. And yeah, it makes sense because it is developing, it is changing, and it is the hot topic. But keep sending your ideas. We're going to try and listen to them all and get them to you. I am Cheebert, ADVNETLAB, Advanced Net Lab on Twitter. I'm also Cheebert at twit.tv if you want to throw me an email, or you can throw an email to TWiT at twit.tv, and that'll hit all the hosts. We'd love to hear from you. And I still do a call out. I'm not sure, you know, who's kind of rotated out. I used to have a good friend from the Interop program stationed at McMurdo Sound. I'm not sure he's there anymore. So I'm kind of hoping whoever's now watching at McMurdo can toss me an email. So Cheebert at twit.tv. I'd love to hear from you and compare notes.
Appreciate that. Also want to ask the same set of questions for Mr. Oliver Rist, executive editor at PC Mag. Oliver, we're in a new year. What sort of new things do we have to look forward to over at PC Mag?
Aside from having to rescue my baby back ribs from the Traeger in a few minutes, PC Mag, what I'm buried in right now is our annual voice over IP/UCAS testing, which gets significantly more complicated every year. No, you're not going to see that in the next couple of weeks. That's going to take us at least another month of testing and configurationating to make it work. But it'll be a hell of a test once it comes out. So go and look for that. If you want to offer me suggestions or just yell at me, you can head over to the PCMag.com site and punch in my name into the search engine, and my author page will have all my contact info.
Oliver, thanks much. We'll look forward to doing precisely that. As always, we thank you, our viewers and listeners, because while we have a lot of fun here at TWiT, we could not and would not do this without you. We hope that you will take the time to join us live every week at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 p.m. Eastern. And if not, you can find us wherever you find your favorite podcasts. For all of us here at This Week in Enterprise Tech, thanks. And remember, When you want to know what's truly important about enterprise technology, just keep quiet.
Android is constantly evolving, and if you're part of the Android faithful, then you'll be just as excited about it as I am. I'm Jason Howell, host of All About Android, along with my co-hosts Florence Ion and Ron Richards, where every week we cover the news, we cover the hardware, and we cover the apps that are driving the Android ecosystem. Plus, we invite people who are writing about Android, talking about Android, and making Android onto the show. Every Tuesday at twit.tv, look for All About Android.